I used to work overnight stocking shifts at Walmart back in 2018. The hours were rough, but I took the job because it worked around my schedule. My shift ran from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m. And during the day I would sleep, pay my bills, and try to juggle the rest of life like everyone else. The store I worked at was one of the bigger supercenters, the kind that has everything: groceries, clothes, electronics, furniture. And because it was 24 hours, you'd see all kinds of people come in at night. The first few hours of my shift were usually fine. There'd still be customers shopping for groceries, late-night families, truckers passing through. But once midnight hit, the place would go almost silent. Just a handful of shoppers and a couple of us stocking shelves. One night, I was working in the pet aisle, unloading heavy boxes of cat litter and dog food, when I noticed a man push a cart slowly past the end of the aisle. He didn't glance at the shelves. He didn't look like he was shopping. He just stared at me as he passed. I tried to ignore it, but a few minutes later, I heard the squeak of that cart again. I turned and saw him at the other end of the aisle, standing still, watching. The guy was tall, maybe mid-40s, wearing a gray hoodie with the hood pulled up and a baseball cap low on his face. His cart was completely empty, which was odd considering how long he'd been wandering the store. I forced myself to say, "Can I help you find something?" He didn't answer. He just smirked and slowly kept pushing his empty cart. I brushed it off as another weird late-night customer. But when I moved to a new aisle, maybe 10 minutes later, I heard the squeak of those wheels again. And there he was, just standing at the end of the aisle, not saying a word. Everywhere I went, he seemed to show up. Electronics, health and beauty, seasonal aisles. He wasn't shopping, he was just shadowing me. I finally told one of my coworkers over the walkie that some guy was creeping me out. She said she'd keep an eye out and maybe alert the manager. Eventually, I went to grab another pallet of stock from the back. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The man's cart, the empty one, was sitting abandoned in the hallway near the stockroom door, but the man himself wasn't there. I walked faster down the hall, telling myself he'd just left it and gone to the restroom, or maybe out to his car. But as I passed the stacked pallets in the corner, I swear I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, behind the boxes. I didn't stick around to investigate. I rushed back onto the sales floor and found the night manager, insisting he needed to check the back with someone. He grabbed one of the warehouse guys, and they went in together. A few minutes later, they came back looking unsettled. They found the man. He'd been hiding between two stacks of boxes, crouched down like he was waiting. When they confronted him, he claimed he was just lost looking for the bathroom. But when security checked him, he had a box cutter tucked up his sleeve. The police were called, and he was banned from the store. To this day, I don't know what his plan was, but the thought of him waiting back there, silent, with a box cutter in his hand, still makes me shiver. Back when I was in college, I worked evenings at Walmart to help cover rent. Between tuition, bills, and trying to eat more than ramen noodles, I didn't have much choice. The shifts weren't easy, especially around the holiday season, but it paid just enough to keep me afloat. The weeks leading up to Christmas were the worst. Parents would flood the aisles, fighting over discounted toys like it was life or death. Kids ran wild, screaming and knocking things off shelves. Shopping carts were piled so high with gifts they looked like moving mountains. By the time my shift rolled around, the store always looked like a tornado had gone through it. One night in particular still sticks with me. It was just a few days before Christmas, and the toy section was pure chaos. Shelves half empty, toys scattered across the floor, boxes ripped open like wild animals had clawed through them. By around 10 p.m., the crowd had finally thinned out. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I dragged a U-boat cart full of toys back to the aisle. I'd been assigned to straighten everything up, which felt like an impossible task. I started at one end, picking up dolls and action figures, folding boxes back into shape, trying to make some kind of order out of the disaster. It was exhausting. I had just crouched down to restock one of the lower shelves when I noticed something strange. One of the oversized toy boxes, the kind that holds those battery-powered cars kids can actually sit in and drive, shifted slightly. Just the faintest wobble, like something inside had moved. At first, I brushed it off. Those boxes were bulky, and sometimes they didn't stack right. But then I heard it, breathing. Not the sound of air from a vent, not the creak of cardboard, real shallow breathing. I froze, my hand hovering over the shelf. Slowly, I crouched lower and pushed on the flap of the box. It gave way, and I peeked inside. My stomach dropped. Inside was a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. His hair was messy, his face was dirty, and his clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in days. He just stared at me with wide, unblinking eyes. He didn't say a word. Not a hello. Not a cry for help. Just silent breathing. His chest rising and falling inside the box, like he'd been hiding there for hours. I stammered out, "Hey, are you okay? Where's your mom or dad?" But before he could answer, a voice rang out from a few aisles away. "Come on, honey. Mommy said stay put." I froze. Slowly, I turned my head and saw her. A woman was standing at the end of the aisle. Her hair was greasy and tangled, her skin pale under the harsh store lights. Her clothes were filthy, like she hadn't changed in days. But the worst part was her face. She had this wide, frozen smile that didn't look natural. It didn't even reach her eyes. The boy's head snapped up. Without hesitation, he climbed out of the box and ran to her. She grabbed his hand tightly, almost yanking him forward, and they started walking quickly toward the garden section. Something about it didn't sit right with me. The boy didn't look relieved to see her. He didn't smile. He didn't even speak. His body language wasn't that of a kid reunited with his mom. It was more like resignation. I stood there for a moment, heart racing, before forcing myself to move. I went straight to my manager and told him exactly what happened. He didn't waste time. He pulled up the security cameras right away. On the footage, clear as day, we saw the woman leading the boy down the garden aisle. She didn't head for the registers. She didn't even look around. She went straight for the emergency exit. And here's the part that still haunts me. The alarm didn't go off. Somehow, it had been disabled. She pushed the door open and led the boy outside into the night. By the time employees got out there, she was gone. No car in sight. No trace of her or the boy. The police were called. They reviewed the footage and later confirmed what I had already suspected. That woman wasn't the boy's mother. She wasn't related to him at all. I don't know who she was or what she wanted, but the idea of her sneaking a child out through that fire exit with the alarm disabled chills me to this day. And the scariest part is this: if I hadn't opened that box when I did, if I hadn't seen that boy, she might have walked straight out with him. No one would have noticed. No one would have stopped her. And I might have been the last person who ever saw that boy alive. This story didn't happen while I was working. It happened while I was shopping. It was around 2 a.m. after a long shift at my other job. I stopped by Walmart to grab a few things before heading home. The place was practically deserted. Just a handful of employees and 1 or 2 other shoppers. At least, I thought it was 1 or 2. I was in the frozen foods aisle when I noticed something strange in the reflection of the glass. Behind me, just over my shoulder, I saw a tall figure. But when I turned around, the aisle was completely empty. I laughed it off, telling myself I was just tired. But as I moved through the store, I kept catching glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision. A shadow slipping into the next aisle, the sound of faint footsteps behind me. Then I heard it, whispering. At first I thought it was the intercom or a distant conversation, but it was close, very close. And then I heard my name, whispered clear as day. My heart dropped. I never told anyone my name in that store. I didn't know any employees, and I wasn't there with friends. There was no reason anyone should have known who I was. I hurried to the front of the store and started checking out. That's when the cashier gave me a strange look. She asked if my friend was still shopping. Confused, I told her I was alone. She swore up and down that she'd seen someone with me the entire time, a man in dark clothing who stayed a few steps behind me in every aisle. I told her that wasn't possible, but she said she was sure. Security pulled the camera footage, and that's when things got even stranger. The video showed me walking alone through the store. No one behind me, no one following. And yet, in the reflection of the freezer doors, there was a dark shape, always just over my shoulder. I don't know what I experienced that night. A stalker? Something paranormal? Something worse? All I know is, I never shop at Walmart that late anymore.